So the notion I'm hearing a lot about this, which is fascinating, is the larger companies that have more complex problems, right? Those problems you described, they compound when you're a bigger company. They're much more complicated to fix. So it's the earlier stage companies that have the advantage with this stuff today because they have less to deal with in terms of the problem. They can fix it easier and quicker. So, I mean, the question I pose to this panel is: do you then think that the smaller, not the SMBs necessarily, but growth stage or startup companies are really in a position to be faster movers with some of this stuff than larger companies that have much bigger problems to solve? And if you're a provider of AI services, you go after smaller companies that are more nimble and that can use things and adopt things with more alacrity, or do you go for the big guys and try and get a bigger bite of the pie? And where's the market going to move? I think with this particular technology, it's going to be a bit different. I'm hearing that a lot. I'd be really fascinated to hear your thoughts on that. Anybody?
I think some of the things that we've seen is that we've kind of had to change our pitch and our packaging depending if it's more upmarket enterprise versus mid-market or SMB. And I think James pointed it out too, or somebody, maybe Matt, but like the difference of build versus buy at the enterprise level, where you do have the resources to gather the teams to get the data, put it in the data lake, get the insights, versus a small company doesn't have those resources, nor do they want to spend their time doing that. So I think for us at Momentum, as we sell it, we've had to kind of think about, you have to figure out how you're going to plug your system into that initiative that's ultimately going to be building a lot of agents in-house. And in our case, like our value prop is, taking unstructured conversational data and making it structured and clean. So we've become a piece of the much larger puzzle versus trying to come in and say, buy Momentum for X, Y, and Z. Like you could do that, and some customers do, but on the smaller side, you come in a lot more with out of the box agents, out of the box workflows, things that just you don't have the resources to go stand all that up, and you need to have time to value much quicker. So I think that that's been a really kind of fun and interesting go to market and positioning challenge for us, and also to listen to as we have these different conversations. How do we adapt? Like you ultimately can't, as a smaller company, you really can't build a ton of new products to service all these different markets at our stage. But I think it does become a bit of a packaging and positioning to say, like, we can fit in here or we can sell you the whole thing, and we can go after both audiences that way.
Thank you. Rashid?
Yeah, I can chime in here. I'll actually share an anecdote from a head of RevOps I talked to like a few weeks ago at a decacorn, like late stage private company. I wouldn't say they're SMB, they're not IPO, but they're like right about there. And it's interesting. He was telling me that he's getting pitched tools all day long, right? Like RevOps is now almost the gatekeeper out of necessity. They've been burned in the past so many times with tools that promise and don't do anything, and now to the point here, CROs have to have that strategic partner to really vet like what is actually going to do what we need. And the biggest concern he had was that a lot of tools promise these new workflows, these new ways of thinking that are all not actually core to the workflows he needs to solve today at the baseline, that foundation we were talking about. I think James, you might have mentioned like the core foundation to solve for. If that's not rock solid, all of these new ways to think actually ends up being almost like a scary thing. It's like I don't want to go there if I don't feel like I'm in a good spot at the foundation. And so a lot of what he got excited about was when tools come in and say, hey, I already have these core workflows. I want to think about, account planning and relationship mapping and research and doing things that are more efficient for my existing team that's taking so long, the waste, to your point, James, then he feels like that's a great place to begin and can start expanding his mind to everything else that's possible from that first solve. So maybe actually to your crawl walk run, it's like the walk phase, if anything, like getting that point. The latter point I'll just call out too is I'm now reflecting, it kind of jogged my memory. The CRO I talked to a few weeks ago said, there's all the fancy fun stuff about celebrating and being in a good spot and closing the quarter. But the one really boring thing every CRO wants is governance. It's just the basic understanding that everyone on their team has a standard they're holding themselves to, and the entire team is operating against that standard for those workflows that RevOps is helping them solve for. If you don't have that joint communication of here's what I know needs to be true, and RevOps, please help me find and solve that baseline, everything to them, frankly, feels like scary noise because it is just a lot of things that you can go and explore. But I don't know, I'm noticing a trend if you can really get those baselines down. Again, very core workflows, I think everyone here tries to solve for. Multi-threading, relationship mapping, account research, planning, signals, all of the ways that you otherwise would spend 10 hours a day trying to do. That's where the meat of the value is. And then that's you're in, especially in enterprise, to say, okay, great, you're feeling good, we're rock solid, we're powering your core engine. Let's go think about everything else that agents flying around unsupervised can go do for you from there. So just two anecdotes I kind of realized marrying in my head after this conversation.
Thank you.
I was
Hey,
hoping
Matt, what's up?
to,
Mhm.
yeah, Warren, answer the question directly too. That I do think that the smaller players have an advantage here, and I'll mention something that Josh, I think you'll feel passionate to chime in on, is one of the things that the big players I think have going against them is that they have so many sort of large vendor agreements already in place, and as every SaaS company on the sun has bolted AI onto their service, they're in a mode where they need to evaluate what they already have first to fail first with what they have before they move to a more sort of AI native way to go and approach and solve that problem. I know that, you asked a question about selling to early stage versus enterprise, or we do both at Vivint. And like James, we run into a lot in the large enterprise. You have people that are like, we'll just build everything. We got a data lake, we got this, we're going to go whip up all this stuff custom. It's almost like when cloud came out, they're like, yeah, we'll just go build everything in the cloud. And what they're trying to do first is experiment with not only their own tooling, but then the things that their really, really large vendor providers already are giving them. And it takes them 6 months to figure out, oh crap, the stuff that's bolted on doesn't work. Now I need to go through another evaluation cycle to say, how do I take those use cases off the plate? And I think when you're an earlier stage company or a CRO, like you don't need to be as encumbered with a lot of the top down, I gotta do this before I do that. And you just have more freedom to move faster.